was sitting here and I reviewed the original Cinderella movie for Valentine's Day, and I figured, the remake is 10 years old, so figured why the hell not? And I think this is the first true entry in the Disney live-action remake formula. This was directed by acclaimed Shakespearean man Kenneth Branagh, who you might also remember as Gilderoy Lockhart from the Harry Potter franchise. This man was also the director of Thor. So you give a guy who's so familiar with the elegant nature of what this story is, you give him the director's reins, and he kind of knows what to do with it. The story, as if you needed me to tell it to you again, we follow young Ella, played by the phenomenal Lily James, who finds herself at the mercy of her cruel stepmother. The stepmother is played by Cate Blanchett in this one, and man does she hit a home run. The stepmother and her obnoxious biological daughters reduce her to a scullery maid, but despite her circumstances, she refuses to despair. An invitation to a palace ball gives Ella hope that she might reunite with the dashing stranger she met in the woods, who turns out to be Prince Kit, played by Richard Madden of Game of Thrones fame. But alas, her stepmother prevents her from going. Help arrives in the form of a kindly beggar woman who turns out to be the fairy godmother, played by Helena Bonham Carter, bibbidi bobbidi boo, so on and so forth. If you've seen Cinderella, unless you've been living under a rock, come on, you know this story. And I think Kenneth Branagh does a great job of presenting this material. Look at the scope of this thing, the production design, the costumes. Like, holy bananas, this guy understood the assignment. I can't give enough praise to the costumes in this movie, especially once her dress turns into that elegant blue ball gown. The butterflies sequined all over it. It is just gorgeous. The performances themselves, I actually think, are really great. Lily James, I think this was actually my first introduction to Lily James. She's really turned into one of my favorites. I mean, I just saw her over the past decade appear in two of my all-time favorites. Baby Driver, she was the romantic interest in that across from Ansel Elgort. The Iron Claw, she played the wife of Zac Efron. I think this was the big launching pad for her career, though. And it's not hard to see why. She embodies the strong spirit of who Ella should be. And I know I keep calling her Ella. The movie is called Cinderella. She doesn't take on that name with pride until the very end. I think it's actually very clever what this script does in terms of additions to the original source material. Because remakes are super hard to do. And it's super hard to justify the existence of a remake. Aside from, I'm just going to keep moving my fingers like this. I have a massive itch. But yeah, I think this movie does a really solid job at justifying why it's here. I absolutely love the origin of the name Cinderella. Ella fell asleep right next to the fireplace, unfortunately, and she had a bunch of cinder smeared all over her face, which leads to her stepsisters basically insulting her by calling her Cinderella. That's brilliant. And I also really appreciated how deep we delve into the backstory of Cinderella, how Lady Tremaine came into the household. And it honestly kind of makes you hate Lady Tremaine all the more. Especially because she's coming in and changing everything up after her father passes away. And man, Cate Blanchett just sells every single story beat of this. The only thing that I have working against Cate Blanchett is that I don't necessarily think she was as intimidating as the original Lady Tremaine. Like, come on, you cannot get a death stare down any better than what they did in 1950. It's impossible, you just can't. I think all the other performers they get for this movie are rock solid. I love Helena Bonham Carter in this. Basically, she plays the narrator here, because if you, a lot of people don't realize this. Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo is the most famous song to come from the original movie. That is the fairy godmother's only scene. And she hams it up, man. She is such a lovable ditz. And it's coming from someone who's played a lot of pretty extreme characters, what with Bellatrix Lestrange, what with Mrs. Lovett and Sweeney Todd not too long before this. Starting to think it's a pretty hefty departure for Helena Bonham Carter. And I think she does really well with what she's given. You know who else I think kills it is Richard Madden. This guy has so much charisma, which for a guy who's literally dubbed Prince Charming, the actor needs charisma. And I'm sure Kenneth Branagh saw this man's work on Game of Thrones because his schedule was very much open after the Red Wedding. Not going to spoil it for those of you who haven't seen Game of Thrones, but yeah. I'm still trying to recover from that. Robb Stark was my favorite character in the first 3 seasons of Game of Thrones, and then the Red Wedding happens. Good God. But I love that they give this version of Prince Charming so much more personality. I love that they give him so much more character depth. I love that his dialogue is extended beyond just yawning. And his chemistry with Lily James is just so sweet. The dance that they share, the choreography by Rob Ashford is really, really great. Rob Ashford does have some Broadway experience in terms of dance moves, and I think a lot of it looks really clean. Speaking of, the musical score by Patrick Doyle is beautiful as well. This is a guy who's known for his work also on Thor with Kenneth Branagh, and he actually just did Brave before this with Disney. And I think he only amplifies the elegance that Kenneth Branagh is looking for in this project. And I think you absolutely get that. I think it absolutely captures the spirit of what the original Cinderella was. And it brings it into this live action medium in a way that I'm sure Disney was looking at how successful this movie was, and they were like, oh, we can do it with everything now. And yeah, this one and The Jungle Book were probably the most successful Disney live action remakes they'll probably ever do. And it's just gotten so obnoxious to the point where we're getting at least one Disney live action remake every year. My advice to any studio who wants to spearhead a remake: only do it if it's justified and you're looking to improve upon the original source material. Looking at you, DreamWorks. Am I the only one who thinks that How to Train Your Dragon remake is gonna suck? I digress. I mean, my only real knock against this movie, it had a lot of super creative ideas and a chock full of brilliant ones. But I don't know, I feel like you could have trimmed off maybe 10 minutes of this runtime. There's a part where it definitely feels like there's a bit more of a lull, especially both in the first and the third acts. But aside from that, I'm just looking for stuff to nitpick. I think this version of Cinderella is about equal to, if not even better than the original from 1950. It justifies its existence in being a remake. It stands on its own as a narrative. And I feel like you don't really have to have seen the original Cinderella to really enjoy this one. I think in terms of princess movies, it stands out in the crowd. This movie is going to catch your eye and you will fall in love with it and want to just dance all night with it. That was a weird analogy, but I'm going to give Cinderella 2015 an A-. Yeah, I was shocked at how much I really loved this movie on a rewatch. And I loved it before, but holy crap. This movie's great. Let me know what you think of this remake down in the comments section below. Let me know what your favorite Disney live-action remake has been up to this point. There's not a whole lot that you can choose from, if I'm being quite honest. A lot of them haven't really been... oh boy. A lot of them haven't really been all that great, have they? But hit that subscribe button if you're new. Tap on that thumbs up as well. We are inching so very close to that 2,000 subscriber mark. And I have a special surprise that I'm going to be revealing for you guys. I cannot tell you what it is until we get to 2,000 though. Thank you guys so much again for your continued support. And with all that being said, Back Talk, commence.